Salutations, Legion of Doom. Welcome to Podcast The Storm, where social awkward outcasts, crazy weirdos, and all-around nerds convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the Nerdy Occultist, aka the Authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Hello, everyone. I will be right back. I'm actually going to send the link to the live stream to somebody, because somebody recently asked me to, so I will go and do that. I just remembered that I was going to do that, and I forgot to. Over to YouTube.
Okay.
Or not. Well, my phone's not cooperating anyway, so I'll have to do it later. Look me sideways.
Okay. Alright. Not gonna lie, I don't know if it's kind of short or not. Not gonna.
This is a very trailer-heavy week, which trailers tend to move a little bit quicker than articles.
Alright. Okay. Let me... Oh, okay. Now I know it. Okay, there we go. And Dylan sent this to me. This is from apnews.com. Takeaways from AP's report on the religious and moral undercuts in Superman comics.
Just off the title, I'm not really sure how many religious aspects there are to like Superman's system of morality, because he's not like if he has any particular religious leanings, it's probably mostly by osmosis of how he was raised. There are characters who do have extreme like religious aspects to their moral compass, like Daredevil, for example. But off the top of my head, whenever I've seen Superman have like a moral or philosophical quandary that he needs advice on, he goes to his parents, to his, significant other, and or his family, or to his friends, especially his friends in the League. I don't really... If Superman was ever, like, overly religious, it's been a very, very long time since that was ever a part of his character, because as I understand it, Superman's, like, moral compass is mostly a self-directed one, i.e. he doesn't do things based on codes of, like, rules and shit. He does things because his intuitive sense of goodness is obvious to him, and that, like, Superman strikes me as the type of person who does the good that is in front of him that he feels obligated to do. He doesn't really couch his ideas in systems of rules and like philosophical diatribes generally, because Clark is very much a humble, average dude. He doesn't really have an intellectual side to him, and I think he knows that. That's why typically when he needs intellectual advice, he goes to talk to Bruce or somebody else in the League who is more intelligent than he is, generally. Anyway, moving on.
Alright, this is by Deepa Hathrath of the Associated Press and Bob Smetana of Religious News Service. This is published, I'm going to assume this is published April 18th, 2025.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Uh, Superman comics. Sorry, Superman comics are not overtly religious, yet faith and morality have been baked into this superhero character who was born Kryptonian, raised Methodist, and created by two young Jewish men in 1930s Cleveland. When the
I I don't think. See, here's the thing: religion and morality are not the same thing, and Superman is a pretty quintessential example of that. Like I say, if he has any like religious aspects to his morality, he probably picked them up mostly by osmosis because of how he was raised. But I've never seen Superman go to a church and ask the advice of a priest. Typically, when Superman is faced with moral quandaries or like philosophical issues, he goes to his parents, he goes to his significant other and or family, and he goes to his friends, several of whom he acknowledges are smarter than him. These are the people that Clark tends to rely on because again, I don't think Superman is a very strict, like rules based. Like his morality is not rules based; it's intuition based. I think. Um, to borrow a quote that I really like from the 11th Doctor, "Good men don't need rules," and I think Superman is a quintessential example of that. He is so just intuitively good by definition that he doesn't really either through inclination of his person or through any particular like broader philosophical need. He doesn't need to codify things in rules and precepts and so on. He does what his intuitive sense of morality like incentivizes him to do, and he does, to borrow another phrase from another character. In Discworld, there's a character by the name of Granny Weatherwax, and one of her like guiding premises is you do the good that is in front of you. And I think Clark is very much like that. He doesn't. I don't think he. I don't think he has a strict set of rules because he simply doesn't need them. If you don't have, if you don't have, um, if you don't have immoral impulses, you don't really need strict rules to prohibit negative moral impulses. And Clark's morality, insofar as he has one, is a very intuitive, very case by case. I will do the good that is in front of me, and I will do what intuitively makes sense for me to do. And again, Clark is a very humble person by definition. He doesn't really think of things in terms of larger repercussions. I mean, obviously, he does fight larger things, like when Darkseid shows up and wants to destroy all life. He intuitively understands, okay, that is not a good thing. I'm going to prevent him from doing that. But
hey,
the
Dalton,
sorry.
I looked it up. Apparently, he is Methodist. Like it's actually canon.
Well, but I don't particularly care because it doesn't really inform the character much. Is the thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it depends on. Do you know anything about Methodist?
I was baptized a Methodist. They were the church that told me to get the fuck out. Um,
Okay, so I feel like you're looking at this from a very personal lens.
well, no, this is the thing. I think it is erroneous to try to enforce religiosity onto Superman because
No,
Superman's.
I'm not disagreeing with you on that.
Yeah.
I'm just pointing out that for one thing, I did not know. One, because it never really comes up, mind you.
Well, and that was kind of my point. I think it's somewhat erroneous to try to project like hyper conservative religiosity onto Superman because
He's not really anything like that at
yeah,
all.
he just doesn't. He just again, it goes back to the 11th Doctor quote: "Good men don't need rules," and Clark is the quintessential good man. So he doesn't. He he's never felt the need to waste his time arbitrating philosophical rules for himself because his intuitive sense of morality, born from how he was raised and the people he surrounded himself with, seems to be so self-contained that he simply doesn't need to ponder the larger consequences of shit. He does the good that's in front of him, and that's good enough for him in most cases. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, because that was only the first sentence, man. Or first paragraph.
Yeah. Moving on, then.
Superman's character has been portrayed in the mold of Christ and Moses, given how he constantly upholds the ideals of self-sacrifice, powerful leadership, and compassion. Okay, I will grant you, I have heard someone actually propose that he's more like Moses. I will agree to that, given the similarities of that. But I am tired of the fucking Super Christ thing, because there really are there was no miracle birth, there was no destiny of like saving humanity. He chose that.
Yeah. Again, it's this issue of projecting religious morality onto Superman, where there simply doesn't need to be one. And again, back to the 11th Doctor quote, good men don't need rules. Rules, like laws and philosophies and strict structures and belief systems, are for those of us who aren't morally perfect or morally good by default. Superman's morality is very much a self-directed morality. It's very much an intuitive morality. He doesn't need a theology degree or a philosophy degree to be good. He just does what he thinks is good, and he does the good that is in front of him, that he has the capacity to do. This goes back to what the SJWs always try to do, which is try to force Superman's goodness into a political mode, and it simply doesn't work because Clark is one of his greatest moral virtues is humility, and as a man who is humble, he knows that powers aside, he's just an average dude. He doesn't have like political or intellectual or like religious ambitions. He is a good man who, by virtue of his own internal compass of what he defines as good, does the good that is in front of him. Some of the time, that does imply, because he is as powerful as he is, that he will stand up in situations where others cannot, like when he's saving people from natural disasters, or when some cosmic horror comes up and decides to destroy the planet. But there's no broader framework for Clark. He knows things that are good when he sees them and tries to encourage those things, and he knows things that are bad when he sees them and tries to prevent those things, like natural disasters or like Darkseid being a dickhead. But he doesn't think of things in philosophical, theological, religious, or political terms. For that kind of reasoning, he goes to his friends and asks them what they think. And even the people he chooses to be his friends, he makes those choices based on his read of them, his intuitive understanding of, this is a good person, I am going to take their advice into account. And like I say, when Superman has needed moral counsel over the years, 9 times out of 10, it's either his parents, because he's a good old-fashioned down-home simple country boy, his significant other and or family, like Lois, or now his kids and so on, or his friends, the people he considers worthy of, the people, typically, and here's the other thing, Clark usually assumes, I think by default, that most people he respects are smarter than him, and more well-read than him, and more philosophically inclined than him. And so when he is faced with a philosophical issue, he asks the people he trusts who are more intellectually minded than he is. In the same vein as he tries not to view goodness in political terms, because powers aside, He's just a small town kid from Kansas. What the fuck would he know? It's the very same goodness and humility and compassion
Hey,
that
Dalton.
result in Superman being as good as he is that prevent him from being overly egotistical or overly
Dalton.
ambitious vis-a-vis morality. Anyway, moving on. Yes, sorry.
Still haven't gone past the second.
Oh God. Moving on.
To be fair, you are kind of repeating yourself.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. While scholars, comic book writers, and fans alike are struck by the religious undertones of Superman. No, I'm not. In Superman comics, they all agree that what sets Superman apart is his ability to bring hope in a hopeless world. Okay, kind of.
That part's fair enough, but
yeah.
I think again the issue here is you're inserting religion and philosophy and politics, much like the SJWs, where it simply doesn't make sense to be there. He's not Daredevil. Like Matt Murdock, when he is suffering a moral crisis, he goes to a priest and he asks what the church would do or what Jesus would do, whatever. When Clark Kent is faced with a similar moral crisis, he asks his family, he asks his parents, he asks his friends, the people he trusts, and the people he respects enough and expects to be smarter than he is in regards to this issue. Because frankly, Clark is, and I'm saying this in descriptive rather than disparaging terms, he's a very simple, very basic, very straightforward guy. He doesn't do all of this abstract philosophizing. He leaves that to people who he acknowledges are smarter than him, like John Jones, like Bruce Wayne, etc., ad nauseum. That's why he places such a high premium in the people that he trusts. And again, how he decides to trust the people that he trusts is very much an internal, self-guided, intuitive thing, not a rules-based hierarchical structures thing. Moving on.
Superman Day and the Superman Summer movie release. Friday, April 18th, marks the 87th anniversary of the original superhero's birth. It also is the date Superman made his debut in an Action Comics issue. Sorry, a little tired. There's much excitement in the Superman fanverse this year because of the much anticipated Superman movie, directed by James Gunn, starring Dave Cornsworth and the first Jewish actor to play Superman in a major film. Okay, I didn't know he's Jewish. Okay, that's alright. Cool.
Yeah, this I did not know. That's interesting, though. Hopefully this means we can lay off the Super Christ bullshit for a bit.
Like, I speak as a Christian here. I don't like it because that ain't Superman's like whole MO. He's not supposed to be like some godly other being. He's a dude who has the powers of what normal people think is godly, when in fact I would argue more like what demigod kind of.
Like well, and the issue of there are literal gods with literal god powers in.
Dude, a guy with demigod powers like Hercules level, right? Or a little above that, I guess. Depending, I don't know.
It's kind of what we were alluding to earlier with the Superman is just a. Sorry.
Point being, to end my point, has all that power, and yet, much too many cynical bastards, both in the DC universe and in our perception of reality, they do not understand that he is just a good person trying to do good with the responsibility he has of these powers. He doesn't hide like some would. He chooses to use them and not be a selfish prick, unlike many would.
Yeah, and here's what I was getting at earlier. The reason I'm stressing Superman's like simplicity as a character, his lack of ambition, his lack of erudition in the way that so many writers want him to be, is because people get so hyperfixated on the super, they forget the man part. He's not a god. He's not a savior. He's not a messiah. He is the platonic ideal of the best possible human man, which is why it gets so frustrating for somebody like me who does very much err on the mystical side of things, who full well knows that there are literal deities in the DC universe who have powers much more akin to godhood, like weather control, like telepathy, like telekinesis, like reality bending, like various forms of energy projection, and so on. There is a lengthy list of powers Superman does not have, which are more quintessentially godlike, and yet people still make the super god bullshit comparisons because people don't seem to understand that his powers are human capacities taken to their logical extreme. Physical strength, agility, which eventually, of course, evolved into flight, etc., and so on. Durability. All of these powers are extremely physically narrow and physically based powers because they are human capacities taken to their largest possible extreme. But Superman doesn't really have non-human or quasi-deific capacities. There are characters who do, like Dr. Manhattan can rewrite reality and matter and space and energy on the molecular level. Martian Manhunter has telepathy. Various different deific and various different magic users have various different controls over the weather, or controls over the soul, or controls over the spirit, etc. Superman doesn't have any of those because he's not a god. He is a man taken to its largest possible extreme. I used to say this in a more derisive way, but I still stand by what is probably my favorite quote about Superman ever said, which is from the Superman animated series episode, The Hand of Fate. You are strong for a mortal, but a mortal is all you are. And I think, and this is to Clark's credit very much, part of the reason he is so lacking in political, moral ambition, like wider societal issue ambition, is because he is humble enough to know he is just a man. Powers aside, impact aside, moral upstandingness aside, he is a very simple man with very simple desires and wants to do the good that is in front of him and to make the world a better place in a case-by-case, individual instant-by-individual instant basis, not in a utopian, I want to make the world a utopia sense. He leaves that kind of philosophical and moral debate and rule following to people who are smarter than him and who are more intellectually inclined than him, I think. And again, that's to his credit, not to his detriment.
All right. On his Instagram page on April 18, 2024, Gunn shared a photo of himself, coinciding with Rachel Brosnahan, who plays Lois Lane in the upcoming film, regarding, among several comic books, a reproduction of Action Comics #1, the very first one featuring the Man of Steel. Okay, also Satara has done so often, likes to point out, not to insult you, obviously, I honestly, I do understand.
No, the reason I get so hung up on that is because I have had arguments with people who sincerely believe that science fiction is more indicative of the soul of comic books than magical shit is. And then you point out that Zatara appeared in the very same issue that Superman did, and that Dr. Occult beat Superman to publication history by 3 years, and people's brain short circuit. Anyway, moving on.
To be fair, I would argue more like Pulp Adventures and stuff, or
Yeah, that would actually be a sane argument, because Pulp Adventures can both have sci-fi aspects and magical aspects. But to some people, if it's not an alien, a scientist, or a mutant, it doesn't belong in comic books because people are dumbasses. Anyway, moving on.
His Instagram post, Gunn also paid tribute to the superhero, saying he gave us someone to believe in, not because. To be fair, it's. Hold on, I'll read it, and then I'll say my piece. He gave us someone to believe in, not because of his great physical power, but because of his character and determination to do right no matter what. Okay, so the thing I have to say is, it wasn't really. I mean, technically, yes, Superman as an icon, sure, but the guys who were just, I feel like, to actually give homage. I know creations can outlive the creators, but given the shit that Joe Shuster and
Jerry Siegel have
thank you,
had to deal with.
yeah, and the estate and stuff, and I mean, like, if I remember correctly, by the time Superman the movie was coming out, they weren't getting any royalties or anything. Granted, at that time, no one really did. Like,
Which is just some bullshit. Let's be real here. We're totally on Siegel and Schuster's side with regards to this.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, like, one of them was working in the post office, barely scraping money by, and they were like, what, in their 40s, 50s, maybe 60s, actually?
Yeah, if Superman the movie came out in 78 and Siegel and Schuster were both, I believe, in their early 20s when they made Supes in 1938, so they'd probably be like mid 60s to mid 70s, if I'm doing my math right here.
Maybe mid 60s to early 70s. Either way, they got completely screwed over, and I do legitimately think those guys should be given a lot more credit.
It's an utter farce that the creative team that gave us Superman essentially lived in squalor more or less until the day they died. Granted, that happened a lot back in the day.
Yeah, look, honestly, creatives have always gotten screwed over by those that are like greedy, money hungry executives and shit.
But that doesn't make it right, and it doesn't make it any less absurd that happened in the first place.
It's a fucking travesty, and it makes me sick to be in this world often. Anyway, I got nothing to say really to Gunn, obviously, about this, obviously, except the thing I just mentioned. Mm-hmm. Just because it's not really much there. It's just like a tagline, really, effectively.
Mm.
Gunn's film proposes a return to a version of a vulnerable Superman who is rooted in values espoused by most faiths. Goodness, compassion, hope. I mean, depends on the faith. Or hold on. Let me rephrase that. It depends on who is preaching the faith, because I have stated this several times. I don't have a problem with religion. I often have a problem with those that preach it.
Yeah, here's the long and the short of it. You don't need religion or ideologies to be a good person.
No, you don't.
And in many cases, religions and ideologies have gotten in the way of people's goodness rather than facilitating it.
Okay,
not all, obviously, but
again, I think the issue is not so much the religion itself; it's just more so the people that are in charge of it. But again, I think the issue with religion, my issue, specifically mine, right, personally, with organized religion, is that it's kind of rigid. It's very... Oftentimes, guys who are in charge of it are kind of just fucking assholes that aren't willing to accept change and understand that... Well, okay, honestly, it just kind of spans to my personal belief that it's more of a personal spiritual thing than when you have like a religion, which is kind of a set doctrine of ideals.
This is why I opened with the 11th Doctor quote, "The good men don't need rules" quote, because in a lot of cases it seems like people without any particularly strong moral intuitions have used the hyper strict rules of religions and ideologies as substitutes for a moral compass rather than as a supplement to moral compasses. And I think Superman is a perfect example of when you are genuinely good, you don't need the training wheels anymore. And that's what most religions and most philosophies and most ideologies ultimately are. They're moral training wheels for people who don't have intrinsic, internal senses of morality of their own. And while there are good people who are people of various different religions or various different ideologues, there are also people who, by virtue of using their hyper strict rule system as a substitute for a sense of moral intuition, get so hyperfixated on following the rules that they completely miss the actual point of having a moral system, which is to facilitate some kind of goodness. And the truly good, as a general rule, don't need and don't really benefit from the training wheels. It's only the people who don't really have moral senses of their own that require the training wheels. Moving on.
Hello, Jonah. Nah, not really. We're just covering people that are trying to espouse or
they're trying to use Superman as a human shield or a mouthpiece for their ideology, as so many people try to do.
Yeah. All right, Superman's Jewish roots. Actually, I will be fully honest. I've always thought, like, my belief or headcanon was that Superman was Jewish, just simply because of his creators and basically the connection of Jewish, like, artists and creators of, like, the times that create a lot of, like, the golden age superheroes and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
sorry, go ahead.
Well, okay, and to be fair, my knowledge is limited comparatively to the doctrines and beliefs of Judaism. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But I do think, again, this is just be a universal thing with Superman, obviously. And again, his connections with Moses, who I believe is a prominent figure within Judaism.
Yeah.
He's a. I just kind of think like Superman upholds a lot of ideals or beliefs of Judaism, not directly, obviously, but so if he was going to have a religion, I would just automatically assume he was Jewish.
That being said, I don't think Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster made him with the intention of having him be a Jewish moral exemplar. Because if that were the case, I don't think they would have had him land in Kansas and be raised by two apparently Methodist parents. I truly think that if Superman has any religious leanings whatsoever, they're probably just things he's absorbed by cultural osmosis more than anything.
Yeah, that's fair. Much just a normal thing.
But yeah, I will agree with you in the sense that I feel like when people get the tendency in their heads to try to make Superman a Christ-like figure, it would benefit them to remember that Superman was created by two Jewish guys who did actually weave aspects of Moses' origin story, being sent away to avoid disaster, being raised by adopted parents, etc.
Right. I'm also curious if they did that. I don't know if I'm wondering if they did that, if they didn't do that intentionally. It just because that's sometimes that happens with me, and not everyone like outright ever thinks that stuff.
Yeah, and if they did it, I think they did it by accident or intuition, because just like you can make Moses parallels with Superman, you should also take into account the other influences that Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster explicitly said they used, like Flash Gordon, like the other like space hero dude that I can't remember the name of.
Buck Rogers.
Thank you. Why was I kept thinking Buzz Aldrin, but no, that's the actual astronaut. But yeah, Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon, sci-fi. It's kind of like how people try to make all sorts of Jungian parallels with Star Wars, and obviously the Jungian parallels were there because George Lucas explicitly wanted to make a sort of test case for Joseph Campbell, but George Lucas also threw in Western influences and pulp serial influences and so on and so on and so forth. And I think the need to hyperfixate on themes and authorial intent and morality, as it so often does, blinds people to, okay, you want to say his Jewish influence is important because Moses parallels, fine, but by your own logic, you must say that Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon and John Carter of Mars are just as important to Superman being who and what he is. If you want to give credit to the Moses stuff without giving credit to the Buck Rogers stuff and so on,
Actually,
then you're being unnecessarily selective and you're picking and choosing.
Right.
Either the influences matter or they don't.
John R. with being a genuinely good person, but part of a story has some aspects of Jewish stories like Moses. Could be unintentional, but I think that small part is intentional. I mean, of his journey to Earth from a doomed homeland. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
I think it's an influence, but it's a mistake to weigh that influence any heavier than you weigh the influence of John Carter of Mars, Buck Rogers, and Flash Gordon.
I don't think that's what they're saying. Don't.
No, and I'm not saying, but just to be clear, I'm not opposed to taking Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster's influences into account, but fuck your special pleading. You like the Moses parallel because it has moral connotations, but if you want to take Superman's influences into account, that means taking all of them, not just the ones that are morally and spiritually and philosophically convenient for you because of my themes.
Okay, I'm confused. Are you talking to the author of this article or are you talking to Jonah? Because I just read Jonah's comment. That's what I was talking about.
No, I'm just talking in general because people do this. This is one of the reasons I despise themes as a subject matter in general. People do this thing where they decide randomly that certain influences on a character are important because they have moral or socio-political significance, but then they completely ignore all the other influences, or they treat those influences as though they're trivial. Like, people will say Superman being a Christian character has more influence on him, or Superman being a Jewish character has more influence on him than being a homage to things like Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers and so on. And I don't see that. If you want to say the themes are important, then all of them have an equal level of weight. You don't get to hyperfixate on the Jewishness or the Christianness just because it makes your particular perspective feel good is what I'm saying. If Moses is important to Superman, then so is Buck Rogers, and so is Flash Gordon, and so on. Moving on.
All right. Also, I don't know anything about the other influences of the story for it, other than Space Cowboy and Space Ranger. I don't know. Like, would Samson also work as an influence? Possibly, if we're still sticking with like Judaism stories.
Maybe, but Siegel and Shuster were college-educated people who liked mythology as well, and I believe there are interviews where they explicitly say that Hercules was also an influence. So I'm not sure where. This is the thing. I'm not sure where the Jewishness ends and the just being mythology or pop culture fanboys begins, and I think
Yeah,
it's
that's fair. Again, it was just a question I wanted to ask. Anyway, we should keep going.
Moving on.
Okay. Superman's Jewish roots. Samantha Baskin, professor of art history at Cleveland State University, is Jewish and sees numerous parallels between Superman's origin and the history of the Jews. She says Superman's solitary flight from Krypton in a small spacecraft is reminiscent of Moses' mother placed him in a papyrus basket and left him on the Nile, seeing it as his best chance of survival. Okay, that's okay. It's there.
It's there, but here's the thing: I'm not certain it's meant to quote unquote mean something in the like pseudo intellectual thematic sense. It might have just been because Siegel and Schuster liked those stories, and when they were telling a story of their own, they did homages and callbacks to things that they liked. Which leads us back to, if you think the Moses parallels are so important, then you must also take into account the Flash Gordon, John Carter of Mars, and Buck Rogers parallels. It's this special pleading thing of these things are important because they thematically agree with me or please my ego, but those things are just incidental trivia. It's that pseudo-intellectual, I get to decide what themes are more important because reasons thing that people do that I dislike a lot.
Well,
yeah.
Some else compare Superman's backstory to the Kinder Transport, she said, referring to a humanitarian rescue program that transported nearly 10,000 children, mostly Jewish, from Nazi-controlled territories to Great Britain in 1938 and 1939. In Superman's Kryptonian name, Kal-El, chosen by his original Jewish creators, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, the L in Hebrew connotes God.
Yes. El is the Hebrew informal name for God. That's why most angels have a name that ends with either Al or El, because their name means something of God or something related to God. For example, Michael, which is where we get the name Michael from, means who is alike unto God. Gabriel means either strength or voice of God, because in Jewish folklore, the most powerful part of someone from a spiritual perspective was their voice, and so the voice of God was also the strength of God, which is why Gabriel is typically the quintessential messenger angel. Samael, the angel of death, his name translates to the poison blade of God, etc., and so on. Uriel means either the light or the fire of God, and it can go on. But here's the thing, and I realize that for me, someone who waxes lyrical about philosophy all the fucking time, it's somewhat hypocritical for me to say this. But are we ignoring that sometimes people do things simply by virtue of the good old-fashioned rule of cool? Like, I'm fine with the idea that some of this might have been intentional, some of it might have been subconscious, some of it might have been, incidental or whatever. But Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster were also some, lower middle to working class guys in their 20s who really just wanted to be writers, and as such, the good old-fashioned rule of cool is just as valid of an explanation for why things are the way they are as anything else. Moving on.
Also, hello, Giant Journal. Good to see you. I'm doing pretty good. Actually, that makes me curious. Okay, because with the L, what would Kal-El mean?
I don't know. See, this is the other problem with the trying to pseudo-intellectualize and Jewishize Superman. I don't know if Cal has a Jewish or a Hebrew equivalent. This is why I point out it may have just been they thought it sounded cool and alien, so Rule of Cool won out. And could
Oh,
their knowledge of Hebrew, being Jewish
Dalton.
guys in their 20s, have made a difference there? Sure, but I don't know if Cal
Dalton.
means anything Jewish wise.
There are two interpretations of the name.
Okay.
Lightweight God or voice of God, but it's also a variant of the Arabic name Khalil, meaning intimate friend or close companion.
That's an interesting bit of trivia, but I also question whether it was something that Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster were doing on purpose, or they just thought it sounded cool and alien.
No, I am not disagreeing with you. That probably is the reason, but I'm just looking it up, and it's actually kind of interesting because the interpretation for lightweight God actually comes from the Hebrew word kal, which does mean lightweight. El, obviously God. So,
which is somewhat interesting as far as Superman's character, because Kal-El, trustworthy friend, etc. That does work for Clark because Superman does essentially want to be everyone's friend. And as far as lightweight God goes, you could honestly make, and I could see an interesting story being told where they tie that in with Clark's, necessity to have a light touch all the time. Like he has to be very gentle with the world because he lives in a world made of cardboard, etc. But that being said, and as interesting fodder for a story as that would make, there's a difference between, hey, that's an interesting idea, maybe we could incorporate that into a story, and we are intentionally putting this here so that there are these pseudo-intellectual parallels. And I think a lot of the art school critical set seem to come to the conclusion that because we can draw these parallels, therefore they must be more legitimate than the good old-fashioned rule of cool.
Okay. Moving on. Also means L could mean the. Okay. This would be a fascinating conversation. I'd love you guys to have, but also
we have stuff to do.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. There's also thinking that Siegel and Schuster created Superman because they were these two skinny young Jewish men who couldn't go out and fight Hitler, but Superman fought Nazis on the cover of their comic books, Baskin said. In some early editions, Hitler held Hitler. I'm sorry, I'm having a fucking dyslexia moment, I think. I don't think I have dyslexia, but my brain is weird sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
In some earlier editions, Superman held Hitler by his Nazi uniform as he begged for mercy. Actually, to be fair, that was the context, I believe, was Superman flew to Germany, grabbed Hitler, and took him to the United Nations. If I remember that comic correctly.
Harmlessly, I will remind everyone before the Lotus Eater types pipe up and go, yes, Superman should be an authoritarian. No, fuck you. He never was that. Yeah, moving on.
All right. Strong appeal to diverse groups. God damn it. Even these assholes do this shit.
Evidently, once more into the breach we go.
Okay. Superman is relatable to diverse populations regardless of religion, race, or ethnicity. Jean Liu Yang, who has written several Superman comics, sees his own experience as a Chinese American mirrored in Superman stories, caught between two worlds and two cultures. I get it, and yeah, he has had that sometimes, but the guy was raised human for most of his young life.
Yeah, people hyperfixate on Kal-El when they should be focusing more on Clark. We've been over this. DT, what I mean what I meant when I said what I meant when I said that is so many pseudo-intellectual hacks will reach for anything as long as it relates to ma themes, ma nine-diegetic socio-political and moral bullshit, ma this, ma that, ma the other, and never prioritize things like rule of cool, in-universe logic, world building on the basis of homage, or just because they thought an idea was cool, etc. I I think it's a mistake to prioritize intellectual takes like that over the simple basic this is cool and this works because it is well constructed, or because the author wanted to make homages to something they really liked, or something. it it's this. I'm basically railing against the need to pseudo-intellectualize everything, and especially the attitude of I can make these pseudo-intellectual arguments, and that inherently makes my interpretation better than the simple rule of cool or in-universe logic rationales. Like I say, I think making or having a Superman story where the influences of Kal-El, Kal-El, and Kal-El inform or are referenced in relation to Superman's personality would be an interesting story. But just because you can draw those parallels doesn't mean that your story is now more intellectual or more good because you can draw those parallels. It's the demonization of in-universe logic and the demonization of meritocracy and rule of cool that I have an issue with. And especially the pseudo-intellectual egoism of, I can come up with some interpretivist bullshit and therefore I'm better than you. Derp.
Moving on.
Yeah.
Yank says he had one name at home and another at school, just like Superman. Even though he is a practicing Catholic, Yang says he relates more to Superman's Jewish roots. Okay? I don't know what to say to that, to be honest.
Yeah, that's fine for you, but here's the thing. You need to draw a distinction between what resonates with you about the character and what is actually organic to the character. And that goes back to what I was just saying to DT. I think there is this attitude of, in order for something to be taken seriously, TM, you have to pseudo-intellectualize it, you have to thematicize it, etc. You can't just take things by their in-universe mechanics or their in-universe logic or so on. And I think that attitude, that anti-fandom, pro-elitist academic attitude is a large part of the problem here. If you can't see the intrinsic value in things that emerge organically from them on their own merits, I don't particularly care what utilitarian approach you can make with, oh, but we can make this academic argument and therefore that makes it better or more legitimate. Derp. Moving on.
Alright, despite the religious undertones, Superman also appeals to those who are religiously unaffiliated, said Dan Clanton, professor of religious studies at Dione University in Nebraska, adding that the superhero story truly encapsulates American civil religion. What?
Yeah, I don't. This is. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to call it. This is just projection. You want there to be religious or like moral or civil components to Superman's identity, and so you are going to crowbar them in come hell or high water, regardless of the fact that it's immaterial to the character. That it's not organic to the character or how the character has been portrayed for the last 60 years.
Moving on.
Yeah, moving on.
All right. Neil Bailey, a longtime contributor to Superman Hoop homepage, a fan site, is an atheist. He views Superman as a philosophical pragmatist with the ability to solve the most complex problems with the least amount of harm.
Even that, I think, would be an error to project onto him, because again, looking at this from an in-universe perspective, it seems like Clark is sort of defined by his lack of like philosophical, religious, or political ambition, and by his being I'm going to use this word because I can't think of a better one at the moment, but I'm not using it derisively, I'm using it descriptively. Clark is a simpleton. He's simple, he's straightforward, he does the good that he sees to do in front of him, and he doesn't usually seem to put it in a broader philosophical context. Doesn't mean he doesn't have respect for those that do. That's why most of his friends are a lot smarter than him, and why when he does need like more granular or rigid philosophical advice, he goes to his friends, his family, and his loved ones. But much as with the SJWs trying to insist that Superman do more political good, quote unquote, it simply isn't there. It's not who the character is. Clark doesn't think of things in terms of the greater good. He thinks of things in terms of the good that is in front of him. And if he has a larger impact on the world, it's only because he feels the burden of having the power he has and using it in ways that other people cannot, which is why he saves people from natural disasters and why he saves people from beings like Darkseid. Not because he has any grander philosophical or moral ambition, but because this is a negative thing. This is a natural disaster that other people can't stand up against, but Clark can, and so he does. That's why, to Clark, I don't think there's that much difference between punching Darkseid lights out for trying to wipe out all life on the planet and helping the cat out of the tree. Because to him, both of these things are equal in terms of their incidental good. It's just a matter of what does the world call him to do today? What is the good? What is the most effective or the most immediate good he can do at this particular moment? Sometimes that's going to be as simple as I'm going to fly up and get the cat out of the tree. Other times, it will result in Darkseid want to destroy all life. That is a bad thing. Therefore, I am going to prevent him from doing so. But I think trying to project anything more philosophical in Clark's reasoning than that moral intuition is somewhat silly and counter to who the character is. Moving on.
This goes beyond religion to see our commonalities. Bailey said Superman wouldn't care about people's religious beliefs. He would care more about whether they are living up to their human potential.
Yes and no, because the statement living up to your human potential almost makes him sound like a Randian, and I don't think Clark looks down on people who don't like pull a Batman and refine their skills to their highest degree. Which that seems to, I get that that's probably not what the writer meant when they phrased it that way, but I could see someone misinterpreting Superman cares about whether people live up to their human potential as we should write Superman as a Randian or a eugenicist or something. And that's not true to the character either. I think most of the time Clark's opinion on people is live and let live, as long as they are happy and as long as they are not doing bad things or harming themselves or others. I don't particularly care. If I had to guess, that's at least the most consistent way Superman acts in most of his best comics. I think that's actually a major disagreement between Clark and Lex. Lex actually does look down on people for not cultivating their highest human potential. Clark doesn't, and that makes Lex go nuts, because how can someone so powerful and so great and so wonderful not look down on people for being less than their fullest potential? Moving on.
Okay. Superman inspires humans to do better. Grant Morrison, one of the best-known writers of Superman comics, said in a 2008 interview that humans become what they imitate, which is why he made Superman an inspirational character.
I don't. Sorry. Go ahead.
Superheroes have received less than flattering treatment. Actually, okay, hold on. It's a different thing entirely. Don't say your piece.
Okay, so here's the thing. I think Superman does inspire people, both in and out of his universe. But honestly, I don't think that's Clark's goal. I don't think he wants to inspire people. I think he just does what he thinks is good and right, and that inadvertently winds up inspiring people. I don't think Clark really sees himself as an aspirational figure. I think he just does what he thinks is right and good, and because what he thinks is right and good is most often actually the case, i.e., it's actually like he successfully intuits what the right answer is and does it. I think that ends up inspiring people, but I don't think Clark ever set out to be inspirational. I think he set out to do the best he could, and being the best he could ended up being inspiring. I think this is another difference between Lex and Clark. I think Lex Luthor actually does look down on people for not unlocking their fullest potential, and he actually does want to be an inspirational figure to the point of stroking his ego. But Clark doesn't particularly care one way or the other about being inspirational. If he inspires people to do better, so much the better, but it's not a goal. It's not something he sets out to do. It's something he does by being a good example. In fact, most of the time, Clark seems not oblivious of the fact that he's as inspiring as he is, but I guess naive. Like, he doesn't seem to realize how much his opinion matters to so many people. Which, again, I think goes back to the positive quality of his, which is humility. He sees himself as just a dude doing the best he can. And so when people see him in this idyllic way, it just as often as not blindsides him a little bit, I think. Which is again probably his humility being creating a blind spot for him there. Moving on.
Superheroes have received less than flattering treatment in recent films and television shows. For examples, in The Boys, a comic book turned Amazon Prime series, the Superman-like character Homelander is a government-sponsored hero whose smiling exterior conceals the heart of a sadist. That's fair.
Yeah, and let's be real here. Part of the problem of modern takes on Superman is so many people have gotten so used to looking down on Superman because of all the evil Superman alikes, the Injustice One, Homelander, Omni-Man, etc., that people have honestly started losing faith in Superman being what he is, which is just which to put it simply, Superman is just that good. He doesn't need a grander reason for it. He doesn't need a emotionally scarring backstory, Zack Snyder. He doesn't need some hyper rigid philosophical code. He has a self-directed, intuitive sense of morality that works because he just is that good. Similar to the MCU Captain America. He's not good for any particular philosophical reason. He just is that good by default. And as the 11th Doctor would say, good men don't need rules. Rules are for the rest of us. Moving on.
Gun Superman is expected to change that trajectory with a superhero who will reinforce the character's core value of preserving life at any cost. An altruistic view of Superman can be found in the recently concluded Superman and Lois television series on the CW network, in which, after defeating Lex Luthor in the final battle, the couple settles down in a small town and starts a foundation to help others. I didn't just want to be a hero that saves people, the Superman character, played by Tyler Hoechlin, says in an epilogue to the series. I wanted to connect with them, to change their lives for the better. That's it. That's it for that article.
DT, I stand by my original statement. I think it's a little bit cynical to reduce it down to good intentions. You don't need religion or ideology to be moral. Frankly, hyper strict moral structures are for the rest of us, those who don't have an innate sense of goodness. I'll use myself as an example.
Stop. You do.
Yeah. I don't. I will use myself as an example. I have no goodness in me, none whatsoever. What I have instead is a hell of a lot of lawfulness. But I stand by the Doctor Who quote, good men don't need rules. That's kind of how I know I'm not one, because I need a whole bunch of rules just to function. Anyway, moving along.
One sec. Alright. This is the behind the scenes look of Superman that was released on Superman Day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let me full screen it. Banana?
Banana.
Being a child, I loved the purity of Superman. It was a time when I was starting to understand what movies were.
James didn't know that Superman was in his future. He wasn't sure that that was the one he should be doing.
I'm gonna have to call bullshit a little bit on you, James. I appreciate the sentiment, but you remember as well as I do that you explicitly said years ago that you never wanted to do a Superman movie because you didn't really get Superman. And I think it's dishonest to say that you always liked or always wanted to do Superman when we can prove definitively that is not the case, sir. I'm happy if you've come around to seeing the value of the character. I also have gone on a similar journey of learning to value a character that I didn't previously see the value of. The difference is I can admit it. I once did not understand this character, largely with the help of Brainstormer, I have grown a greater I have grown a greater understanding of this character.
Right. I was going to mention that because, I mean, the guy, I think his first big break in the movies is like working on Troma films, which are
about as sleazy as movies can be, realistically.
Yeah. Not saying he's not a bad director. I'm never going to say that he's not a bad director.
No, he has made far too many amazing things for that to be the case.
Right. But yeah, like you said, a few years ago, I think it was like when the first Guardians came out, and he was asked, or maybe it might have been Super, that low budget superhero movie thing he did.
And it happened again around Brightburn because everybody wanted to know his take on Superman after Brightburn as well, because his brother was involved in Brightburn and stuff.
Right. Yeah, he produced that. So yeah, I do agree. It's kind of disingenuous to say that. I mean, look, if you did watch it and you felt something for it, that's good. That's fine. You know, when you were a kid, that's cool.
But we can prove that for at least a large part of your life, you didn't really like or get Superman, which is fair because, again, I too, at a large part of my life, did not really get or understand Superman either. But the difference between us is I can admit that I previously didn't really like or understand Superman and have since come to like and hopefully understand him more than I did. But again, I understand at some level that this is marketing, so you can't really say I didn't used to like or understand Superman and I had to learn a lot to write this character. Even though, honestly, in my book, had you been honest and admitted that, I think I would have respected you more than trying to sweep it under the rug and act like you never explicitly said you never wanted to write a Superman movie because you didn't like or understand the character. Anyway, moving on. Banana.
Sorry, I was looking at the comments. But
and then he called me one day and he said, I have a way in. I know what I want to talk about.
I had been trying to crack it for years. This character is noble and he's beautiful.
We just finished day 1 on Superman.
It's been a hell of a week at the office. His scripts are so unique, his stories, they're hot.
I don't really have any comment. This is essentially just marketing speak at the moment. Banana.
Well, I do have something to say. It's kind of been a thing that's been bugging me since we've been covering this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wish we got more for stuff they're showing us from the movie, like trailers and stuff. Especially like the last thing we covered was like the scene, like the clip, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would have preferred something from the Daily Planet. You know, him being Clark Kent, interacting with people.
I can understand that. It's kind of like my gripe of why the fuck do we keep seeing the him beaten to shit bit in the trailer instead of focusing on him being this larger than life symbol of purity like he's supposed to be. Anyway, unless you had anything else.
Nah, I think I'm good. All right.
Yeah, we can banana.
His scripts are so unique, his stories, they're heartfelt.
You know, we love the opportunity to play with the incredible DC library of characters and stories, and we really want to do justice for them.
Welcome to the Daily Planet. It's been so much fun to have the gang together finally.
I gotta say, Metamorpho looks good, and I do like how most of it looks pretty like practical. You know,
Yeah, that's nice.
I respect that. Yeah.
Yep. I don't know.
Uh. mm, mm. Yeah, I got nothing else. I think we're good. Okay, but now.
I wear my trunks on the outside of my pants. Like, it's liberating.
James, in his stories, he does it with heart.
Superman is a
Not wrong. Also, the trunks thing that's pretty fun. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, I kind of wish they would stop drawing attention to it, but I get that it was they're trying to be lighthearted and humorous, so fine.
I'd be fair, like most of the time, people try to avoid this shit and say it looks stupid. And honestly, I think most people who say that shit are stupid. So,
Frankly, I've always been of the mind that we should actually see him like this. This would have been another case of, dear God, I wish these movies would be period set sometimes. If we actually saw Clark, like looking at old strongman pictures, or maybe even finding his way into a sideshow or something and seeing strongman suits being like that, and actually having that explained as part of his origin story, that would be neat. But that's just me griping on the why the fuck aren't they making Golden Age set period pieces again for the checks notes probably 5,000th time. So I realize I'm nitpicking, but if I ever run out of nits to pick, I'll probably just die of boredom. So who knows?
all right,
Banana.
character who's good.
Who is filled with hope. He saves people because it's the right thing to do. We could use a little bit more of that.
Superman was my original superhero, and it started in comics, and I think it's going to be a game changer.
This is the beginning of the future. They are launching a new era.
See, if this was actually the first thing that came out, like for everything, I feel like it would have been a lot, but we would have.
Yeah, optics is a big freaking deal, and unfortunately, the optics has been at best inconsistent.
Inverted, actually.
Yeah.
Weirdly enough, I think again, if this was the first thing that came out,
there would be a lot more. There would be a lot more optimism, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's weird to me.
DC and Marvel are both in the space right now where it really honestly feels like they're throwing everything at the wall to hope that something sticks. And as a result, it doesn't come off as sincere or like a genuine creative direction. It just comes off as, we need to make something work, so we'll try literally everything and anything. Anyway, banana.
Yeah, banana.
Right now.
It's the beginning of a whole new adventure and a whole new universe.
We're just getting started, and we're already deep in the DC universe. In James Gunn, we trust, and I think we can do it.
I mean, that might be laying it on a bit thick.
A little bit, yeah.
But, like, I get what they want us to take a positive from that, and so I'll try my damnedest, but at the same time, you can't just be a bunch of James Gunn's yes men and yes women. Like, I love James Gunn, I do, but even I, who tend to probably prefer the kind of comic that James Gunn also tends to prefer, I've had genuine criticisms about how he has handled this and how I'm not sure he was the best fit for this particular character or this particular movie. I will gladly be wrong, as I so often am with these kind of things, but there are cracks in the marble, and I refuse to be quiet about them unless someone shows me the other half of this stuff. Show me the other half of the creative decisions that don't make sense to me. If you manage that and you can actually justify it, then I will change my tune, just like I did with Multiverse of Madness and just like I did with Black Adam. But until I see, until you convince me, I will remain unconvinced.
All right, and okay, like, I'm not the only one who's also thought, like, it's been a very slow crawl to all of this, right? Not saying they should have rushed anything, mind you. I'm not saying that. But
they seem to be making it up as they go along a little bit.
Yeah. Granted, the first thing that technically came out in the DCEU was Creature Commandos.
Mm-hmm.
And not a bad show. Like, generally, I think it's good. Granted, again, I've obviously made my gripes about it. Because it's kind of very short, and oftentimes we don't see the actual Creature Commandos. We see more so the individuals that make it up. And again, I get that, it's fine, but I don't know, it's weird. I don't know how to explain it. It feels off to me for some reason.
Like I said, it has a vibe of making shit up as we go along and throwing everything at the wall and hoping that something sticks. It doesn't seem like there was much of a plan going in, and that I think is part of the problem.
No, they did have a plan, but it just, I don't know, it seems oddly
incomplete.
Well, that, and also, like, again, like, taking your time. I would obviously be fine if they took their time, like, making sure everything's right, you know?
I've been saying this for years. If you asked me what I would have done with the DC universe, I would have put things on the shelf for the next couple years, and then had your Superman remake come out in 2038, and made a bunch of Golden Age period pieces, and start with the JSA rather than the JLA, so that we can actually see the world grow from its early days into the Silver Age and so on, and the transition from Golden Age to Silver Age would have made a perfectly natural, organic place to, when you need to overhaul the cast, because actors age and there's no getting around that. When you need to overhaul the cast, you can pass the torch from the Golden Age to the Silver Age, like they did in the JSA two-parter of Smallville, and we could have kept it going. That's what I would have done, because it would have given people time to let go of the Henry Cavill thing, let go of the mismanagement of the Snyderverse and the pseudo Snyderverse, and actually allowed for some kind of mimetic synergy to happen. Because, of course, if you released a Superman movie in 2038, that is the century mark for Superman as a character, and had you based it in the Golden Age, we could have essentially gotten callbacks and homages to the Golden Age of comics around its 100th anniversary. Not to mention, DC, as a practical marketing push here, Marvel can't really follow you in the Golden Age. They already did their Golden Age homage, and that was the first Captain America movie. They own the Silver Age, but DC has always and almost unilaterally owned the Golden Age, and I beg you, DC, to actually make use of it, goddammit. Moving on, sorry. But
well, I was gonna point out Honestly, okay. And I think I talked about this once because I'm kind of rewriting Creature Commandos to fit the DCEU that I'm doing a whole rewrite thing of, which is taking fucking forever.
Mm.
God, they really fucked that up so bad.
Uh-huh.
My general idea was, I think also the issue I have is, oddly enough, I think Creature Commandos is like a bit too adult, if that makes sense. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and not like adult. Like, I would be fine if it was more how to say what would be a comparison here?
It's a little bit too close to Rick and Morty and not close enough to something like Gargoyles or the DC animated universe in terms of like its adultness.
Maturity would actually be the better word.
Yeah.
It's
being adult in the edgy sense, not in the mature sense.
I think that's actually what we can differentiate. Well, I would prefer a mature series, not an adult series. There.
Yeah. Less Rick and Morty, more DC animated universe.
And I think I told you this, Dawn. Hello, Zarya. Good to see you. Well, for one thing, the person I would have put in charge of Creature Commandos, for one thing, I know Cartoon Network is dead, like it was shut down, canceled, all that shit.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's still going, I would have gotten the guy who did the Secret Saturdays, also Tuttenstein.
That would have been a good choice. I think he could sell superhero monsters really, really well.
Right,
Given
but
that, he already kind of has.
Well, his whole thing was like creating cartoons or like stories that, while engaging and interesting, could also teach kids about stuff. Like Tunstein taught kids about like Egyptian mythology and just overall like that stuff.
Secret Saturdays taught a lot about like cryptids and obscure forms of science and parapsychology and all that business.
Yeah.
Mythology a little bit too, etc.
And how I thought it would work here was like, one, obviously could teach various forms of like the subcultures of magic and stuff like that, and like the different like teachings of it, while also exploring the more magical, mystical, and interesting history and side of the DC universe.
Mm-hmm. Also, literature homages, because of course you got Dracula, you got Frankenstein, etc. Like, homages to classic literature would not have been a bad idea as well.
Yeah. And yeah, I have like whole notes written about it. I haven't settled anything concrete yet, mind you, because I'm still working on it. But yeah. Mm-hmm. But kind of looping it back to this whole DCU thing, it just feels oddly vacant,
It feels like almost every creative decision was an afterthought, honestly.
I don't want to say this shit. I want to be absolutely clear on that. I do not like talking about any of this stuff.
Again, I hope we're wrong here, but I'm not going to see the writing on the wall and not comment on it here. Is the thing.
I don't know. Anyway, got about 10 seconds left, so shall we?
Banana. When is Superman's release date again? Is it before or after Fantastic Four?
Before it's early July. Fantastic Four is late July.
Yeah, because Fantastic Four comes out on my birthday.
Excited.
Which, I mean, I'd be more excited if we were getting a proper Doom and not Sorcerer Supreme Tony Stark meets Infamous Iron Man. But
Fair. But
I've gotten worse birthday presents, so, or at least I hope so.
I don't know if he's showing up in Fantastic Four though.
Well, no, but either way, we're not getting a proper Doom because we have to combine Infamous Iron Man and Sorcerer Supreme Tony Stark, so RDJ has an excuse to come back. Instead of getting Mads Mikkelsen or Christoph Waltz, which would be the ideal casting for Doom.
Again, I will still make the argument for Cillian Murphy on multiple factors, but those I would say your choices are like top two. He's the third, I would say.
Yeah, like I don't have anything against Cillian Murphy. It's just
Cillian.
It's just I think that Maz and Christoph are so perfect for the role that it's frankly unthinkable that in 3 or 4 different versions of Fantastic Four, we still haven't gotten either of them in the role. Or like another good choice, if he were still alive, obviously, would be Alan Rickman. Alan Rickman would be an amazing Doom because I mean, he was already Hans Gruber, so there's that. But like, dead actors aside, the 2 actors living today that are actually, famous who could play Doom are Mads Mikkelsen or Christoph Waltz. And it stuns me that Marvel didn't immediately go, somebody get either of those on the phone, especially considering that Maz has already worked with Marvel once and they did him dirty the last time they did him. So it would be a nice apology to Maz to give him Doom. Moving on, though.
I can see Mads Mikkelsen more. I think Christoph Waltz, is in the weird kind of territory that he doesn't really do a lot of roles often. He's like very particular. I don't know if he'd be willing to sign on for a like a role like Doom.
And then there's the question of what does he think of the superhero genre?
Yeah.
I would like to think that Christoph Waltz wasn't a bigoted anti-comic book idiot, but
he was the bad guy in Seth Rogen's Green Hornet movie.
That's right. He was Bludnovsky. So
yeah.
It would be a really good get to get Christoph Waltz, and like I can see the warped sort of fan service logic of getting RDJ back, but here's the thing: there is such a thing as good fan service, and there is such a thing as bad fan service. And the thing about having RDJ be Doom is no Iron Man fan likes Infamous Iron Man, and no Iron Man fan likes Sorcerer Supreme Tony Stark. What if? So using that so that RDJ has an excuse to come back is dumb and bad fan service, not good fan service.
Okay. So to get you happy, you're going to be watching the teaser trailer for Wednesday season 2.
Yeah, I really liked Wednesday season 1.
Wait, actually, because I have watched this, that's why I sent it.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't watched this yet, right?
I have not seen it yet. No.
And for the record, you can see it, right?
Yes, okay. I did have some criticisms of Wednesday season 1, particularly as an Addams Family fan, and I made a video. I think it was just entitled Wednesday is a good show, but I'm not sure it gets the Addams. And I hope that season 2 has improved in its understanding of the Addams, because that was my main criticism of Wednesday season 1. That being said, it was still an amazing show, and I'm interested to see where they go with this. Hopefully, they've learned a little bit more about how one writes the Addams correctly.
Shall we?
Yeah. If the mics would pick it up, I would do the snapping thing as the pause thing, but unfortunately, I don't think.
I can hear that.
Okay, so
But
so
I can't do that. Well, I can do that, but I'd have to like go right up to my mic to do it.
uh-huh. But in any case,
Audio coming through?
yes.
On roses and whiskers on kittens, bright copper kettles and warm woolen mittens.
Anything else on your person?
Brown paper packages tied up with strings.
It would
Sorry, I
certainly
love this song.
Sorry, it certainly makes sense that she carries a lot of weapons on her.
I mean that's our girl, ladies and gentlemen. She is an Addams.
Brass knuckles, battle mace. I don't know what the mini katana is called. Pepper spray, knife, machete.
The smallest sort of Japanese variant sword is called a wakizashi.
Probably that. She got taser. I believe a kukri, maybe.
Which, side note, my friend Nick absolutely adores kukri knives. And
Well,
he and I have got.
I don't know if that's like
He
a large kukri knife or not, because I know the design of a kukri knife, but I don't know if that technically counts.
Kukris are very weird and particular knives. We like I was gonna say, my friend Nick and I have spent hours talking about the mechanics behind the kukri knife, because a poorly made kukri knife will like harm the person who's using it more than the person it's being used on. That's because so the kukri knife was created by a tribe of people known as the Gurkhas, and it was made specifically to assist them with extremely delicate martial arts moves, which means that you have to have a very specifically weighted kukri knife, or it will wind up backslashing like a boomerang and chopping all your fingers off while you're trying to use it. So I assume because the Addams have fuck you money, that it's a properly weighted kukri knife and good for Wednesday, in that she knows how to use one, presumably. I'm curious if we're actually going to see her use it on screen, because that would mean that they either had to hire a stunt person for Jenna Ortega, or Jenna Ortega would have had to do a bunch of martial arts practice to properly utilize a kukri knife without hurting herself.
Well, it also could be a prop. I don't think they'd give her a real fucking knife, man.
Honestly, in a world where I was in charge of such things, we would have gotten her into like martial arts training on day one, and would have actually taught her how to use it so she could use it on screen.
Yeah, that's not how Hollywood works, man.
It works that way with the John Wick movies. God damn it! I don't see why we can't have Wednesday vivisecting people with a kukri.
You're weird, man. Anyway,
she is Wednesday Addams. This would not be out of character for her, and it would have been an awesome skill for Jenna to have. So there.
Moving on. Oh, wait. Tomahawk and a butterfly knife, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Which was in
the question is this Wednesday's playing gear, or is this Wednesday's someone has pissed me off and now they must be tortured to death gear?
I'm leaning towards playing.
Given that the first season's first trailer had her pulling piranhas on some bullies who somehow, and I still can't believe this managed to happen, but somehow in the first season, some bullies managed to bully Pugsley, which logistically, how the fuck do you do that? But then Wednesday goes in aggressive big sister mode and pulls piranhas on their asses.
Mm-hmm. I think.
Yeah, I assumed that Thing would be back. I hope Fester comes back too, because probably the best scenes in Wednesday season 1 were her playing off of Fester.
Mm.
They had such good like familial chemistry as uncle and niece there.
All right. Joey?
You care to explain this?
Sun cream, seriously?
TSA, they'll always get you over something stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it's too... Because it can't be what, like... what's the rule? It can't be like 50 ounces or something?
Something stupid like that. I don't even keep track of all the fucking stupid TSA rules.
To be fair, I don't think either of us take planes.
No. And to be fair, realistically, Wednesday had already pulled out a bunch of weapons, so they might have more reason to be skeptical of her.
Well,
but also, she's an Addams, and she don't give a fuck.
Yeah. I'm more surprised they don't have... Well, no, because Addams love to torture themselves, so...
Yep. Masochism is basically
hobby.
Gomez and Morticia's favorite position at any given interval.
Yeah, so going through the tediousness of the TSA, flying coach, because I don't think they'll do first class.
I'm honestly surprised the Addams don't have their own private plane.
Not
for rich reasons or anything, just because they would hate being inconvenienced in this way.
No,
I can see them buying their own plane just so that they don't have to do TSA bullshit.
See, I was going to bring up why they don't have their own private plane, but because they're Addams and they're basically have ingrained masochism in them over anything just genuinely tedious or just stuff that brings about.
You think they deliberately subject themselves to bureaucratic bullshit for the lulz?
Yes, that's also why they try to do the taxes. Well, okay, to be fair, I saw that as a skit once, where they were trying to get tax audited, but it turns out they were actually doing pretty well for taxes.
Good for them.
I think that was also a thing with, like, if I remember the Addams cartoon, Gomez always tried to fail, but he ended up doing everything perfectly. Like, that was a running gag.
Ha. That does seem somewhat appropriate for the Addams. Anyway.
This is the first time you've ever willingly returned to a school. How does it feel?
Like returning to the scene of the crime.
How do you hear me?
I already know where the bodies are buried.
Jenna Ortega continues to be a great Wednesday, surprising no one.
I still would love to see a modern edition of the Monsters, and I have thought about how to do it too, multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird choice for me. I would, as soon as I'm going to say it, I realize it. But take some inspiration from Modern Family.
Okay, I didn't see that coming. You were correct. It was a weird choice.
Yeah. Well, I have seen like the mockumentary thing where like their lives are kind of documented. Because, I mean, the monsters, you know. Just...
You know what? Modern Family meets V.V. Argoff's Weird World. because of course the monsters are monsters, and I could see a documentary team being interested in that.
Well, I
Just
also
for-
could see a little bit of What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah,
Actually-
a little bit too. Yeah.
Yeah, Modern Family meets What We Do in the Shadows. I'm not. I would honestly say more so the TV show than the movie, but I think
Yeah.
either would apply here.
Yeah.
And I know the actor. There's an actor I think could play Herman perfectly.
Hmm.
Hold on, I'm looking up his name right now. Neil Flynn.
I don't recognize his name. What I know it from?
Well, he's in Mean Girls.
Who was he in Mean Girls? And do you mean the original version, or do you
Yes.
mean the musical version?
2004.
Ah.
He was Caddy's dad.
I mean, he's probably a little bit too old now to play Herman, but I get where you're going, I think.
Yeah, well, he was also on Scrubs as the janitor. It was super funny because he would always improv things to get people's genuine reactions.
Right. I am familiar. I've only ever seen clips of Scrubs, mind you, but I am familiar with the janitor.
Oh, he was also in The Middle as well.
That one I recall seeing more ads for than ever actually watching.
Yeah, he played the dad in that one. Yeah, the guy's 64. Yeah. So he was also in. He's been in some stuff. Like again, he's like one of those actors you see the face of.
He could play Grandpa though. That would be interesting.
The guy is 6'5", so again, and he has like. So again, like I would say, like in the early 2010s.
Well, if you want somebody who can be both charismatic and have the physical presence of Herman, Kane Hodder, have him be Herman. Just because I think it would be interesting to see him play a more comedic version of the characters he usually plays, because of course Kane Hodder usually plays the monster, but
Well, he would also get to talk as well. So
yeah, and he has a nice deep voice that would work for Herman, especially if he was yucking it up and being comedic as the character is wont to do. Anyway, back to the trailer.
Yeah. Give me one second. There we go.
Let's play dolls. I mean, it is a little creepy, but the curls are super soft.
I mean, I am a little bit annoyed it's coming out during the summer and not during the fall, because, I mean, Halloween, Thanksgiving time is perfect for this show, and I think the first season was around that time as well. But Hollywood doesn't do scheduling well, so I'm not really surprised. They're trying to make a summer release work.
Here's a funny joke coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on, let me back it up a bit. Okay. Hands are doll.
Super soft. It's made from real human hair.
Wherever there's murder and mayhem, you will always find an Adams.
Every family has dark secrets, Wednesday.
Oh, for the love of, please don't do the dark secrets thing again with the... It doesn't work for the Addams. They don't do that. They don't keep secrets from each other, especially not dark and perverted ones. I know I'm nitpicking, but this was one of my criticisms of season 1. You cannot write the Addams as though they are normal people. They are not. And I don't mean in terms of what kinds of beings they are. I mean in terms of they don't do the shame thing. They don't do the embarrassment thing. Or at the very least, if they are embarrassed, it should be about something that other people consider normal, because that's usually how the Addams work. They're extremely forthcoming about really weird and bizarre shit, and get freaked out whenever someone in their family starts acting quote unquote normal, like in Addams Family Values when Hubert got sick and he started having like Shirley Temple locks and shit. So to an Addams, a dark family secret would be something other families would find wholesome. Anyway, moving on.
Sorry, got distracted. Okay.
And secrets can have deadly consequences.
You don't need to worry about me, Mother. I do my best work in the dark.
Wednesday, my darling, that should be true of all of you. And I realize I'm nitpicking to shit, but I love the Addams, goddammit. And one of the crucial parts of their characters is they do not keep secrets from each other or become embarrassed by dark or deadly shit ever. They celebrate that shit and wear it on their fucking sleeves. Like, this is who the Addams are. And trying to write them like a normal sitcom family when the plot calls for it, or a normal teen drama family when the plot calls for it, goes against their characters. Like, Gomez Addams should not be hiding the fact that he murdered someone once. He should have a little photo album of all his victims and headshots and shit. And they should go, and the family should sit around going through it like every Saturday or something. That should be their equivalent of the parent keeps embarrassing photo album shtick.
So, okay. Okay, this actually raises an interesting question. So, to an Addams, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would the emo phase of an Addams teen years be them being a productive, average American Joe in regular society then?
To an Addams, I think the teen angst phase would essentially be them becoming Regina George from Mean Girls, more or less. Like, if Wednesday went through an emo phase by Addams rules, she'd basically turn into a type A girl in any other circumstances. She would become Sharpay from High School Musical or somebody like that.
So I found out something interesting because I was looking it up because I was curious, right?
Mm.
So there was a reboot in 2012 for the Munsters that was called Mockingbird Lane.
Mm-hmm. Did you not know about Mockingbird Lane?
I honestly thought I dreamed it up.
Ah, well, you didn't. It existed. I remember it existing.
Yeah, it was just one episode, like a pilot, and it was directed by Bryan Singer.
Yep.
Why it didn't take off, I have no idea.
Who knows? I suspect you're going to make it a mission to figure out why though now.
And this might give me something. Hold on. Well, we'll talk after stream, Dawn. Something might stirring up in my brain.
Uh-huh. He's doing a thing again, folks.
Shut up.
Like I say, just don't pull a Richard Maddock and start writing it on the walls in your own blood.
Okay, dude, I get woozy at the sight of fucking blood. I'm not doing that. I would pass the fuck out immediately if I tried.
So you're saying that if, for whatever reason, I ever come visit you and you're unconscious, that I should start. Then when you wake up, I should start chastising you. What did I tell you about using the blood as ink thing? Well.
See, the weird thing is, I don't have a problem of getting blood when it's when I'm donating it, because I've donated blood and I haven't passed out. But like, if it's spilled on the floor or something, or someone's covered in it, then I start to feel woozy.
Interesting.
Which I honestly think is a perfectly normal reaction because, because when you're donating, you're giving the blood freely, and it's going to help people. You know that. But
when it's smeared all over, then that means something has gone very wrong here.
Yeah.
Anyway, next.
Yeah, give me 1 sec to pull it up. Or let it load.
Oh, hell. I don't know why I'm yawning all of a sudden.
Okay. Blood of Zeus Season 3 official trailer. Nope, god damn it, you piece of shit.
Worthy gods who foster peace and prosperity. But that
Okay, sorry. I don't know why it did that.
Ambrosia?
Yeah, it works. I was trying to think of what it was called. Thank you. Ambrosia.
Ambrosia.
Worthy gods who foster peace and prosperity. But that prosperity fosters weak gods who then create hard times. Your judgment is here.
Okay, so I do want to make mention of this because Blood of Zeus. It was created by the studio who did like the first Castlevania series, and I believe they're also doing Castlevania Nocturne as well. Animation wise, it's kind of like their own thing, separate from like Adi Shankar. The guys who helped created Castlevania and Castlevania Nocturne. Also, the Devil May Cry anime. And either way, I might be fully honest. I've only seen the first season. I have not caught the second season yet. Just because like there's like kind of a big space between like the seasons, right? But this looks interesting. I know it's kind of diverged a good amount from like traditional Greek mythology. Granted, a lot of Greek mythology is kind of fucked.
They've been doing that since season 1, though. To be fair.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. Again, oftentimes I'm fine with, because let's be honest, a lot of like old mythologies are very like convoluted, confounding, and just generally overlapping. And
not to mention completely and utterly fucked up.
Yeah, but point being, it's ripe for reinterpretation, adaptation, and just so this is fine because I think it kind of keeps the general heart of a lot of like Greek tragedies. And it looks like the Titans are back, I believe.
Or this is the birth of the giants. Although they used a lot of the giant Namaki in season 1 too, so who knows?
Yeah. Shall we?
Ambrosia.
Cronus, it was only a matter of time before you came. I know why you're doing this. Who you're trying to help. You know nothing.
So yeah, Titans.
Ambrosia.
Yeah.
I've set you free so we can take back what they've taken from us. We will make the universe tremble.
If we don't work together, Cronus will reign over us all.
I know the voice of Cronus. I've heard that voice many times.
Yeah, me too.
I'm looking it up real quick.
Oh, fuck.
Seems like it's the final season too.
That doesn't surprise me. Netflix tends to go in sets of 4.
3.
For their successful shit.
It's the 3rd season.
So they didn't make it to a 4th one this time. That's a shame. Anyway, Ambrosia.
Yeah. It's fucking taking forever to load.
Why? Why would you do this?
For order must be restored.
Olympians, you cannot win.
Okay, where is that voice from?
I'm trying to look. Cronus. So fucking son of a bitch.
It's the guy who voiced
Alfred
Destiny.
Molina.
It's the guy who voiced Destiny in Justice League Dark.
Alfred Molina. Doc Ock from Spider-Man 2. That's who it is. Okay, I'm such an idiot.
In any case, Ambrosia.
Time to be great again.
I think they also have Typhon here as well. I think that's with a giant fucking dragon dude was.
Yeah, probably.
Shit.
The last defense of the Titans during the war.
All right. Shall we move on?
Ambrosia.
Oh, okay. Oh, comes out May. All right.
And the last of the evening.
Yeah, give me 1 sec. All right. Yeah, I sent this, right? I sent
Yes.
I sent all the trailers, didn't I?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is Volume 4 of Love, Death, and Robots, which is a fantastic anthology series of animations on Netflix. I think we covered the first trailer when it came out, like for the first volume,
Yeah.
and we just kind of got hooked on it because it just looked like a lot of passion and effort were put into all like the short episodes.
Yeah.
And a lot of those like shorts actually really made me think, oh god, we could really get like some, some more, like you wish for more of them, right? Like continuations or
Yeah.
like a series based on those like worlds that are invented in there. Some are better than others, mind you, but all of them are creative.
Mm-hmm.
All right, shall we?
Yogurt. Because of the one episode.
Yeah, I got that. Yeah, yogurt.
This world, it's a clenched, feculent sphincter. It cries out for a savior. It cries out for me.
Sounds like it feels a little different than like all the other volumes. Actually, kind of.
I'm wondering if there's going to be like a main plot this time, or this is just one of the, or if this is just one of the shorts that they want to focus on.
No, it seems like they're all shorts. It just, I don't know. See, the vibes of these ones feel different to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Yeah, yogurt.
Let's go.
Anyone got a problem with that?
It was the end of the world.
We still got each other, and when the time comes, we gotta take back what's ours.
I have a proposition. I will give you the earth if you...
I mean, all visually, it's like amazing. Obviously, like,
yeah. I mean, but when isn't Love, Death, and Robots good?
Yeah, fair enough.
Will worship me.
Do we have a deal, son? And so, our crusade begins.
And what begins? She can't take much more of this. Ow! Kiss that thing.
It's one of the fallen.
This dude eats a lot of lentils. If he ever.
Okay, so we're doing some supernatural stuff this time around, which is
Oh,
nice.
I mean, they've done supernatural.
Yeah,
stuff.
they have, like the one Russian demon episode.
Also, the vampire one, the werewolves in Volume 1.
Mm-hmm.
That was actually one of my favorite ones. Actually, like the Dog Soldiers, that was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, like, I don't know, I always find the like action horror genre interesting when like it's like military stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that might just be me, mind you. Anything else like we're talking about? Or?
No.
Okay.
Yogurt.
Yogurt.
Lights of candle. We are all going to die. Kill me now.
I was dead when you came here. You saved me.
You have them. They are cool fountains. Sample my power.
Of course, it's always weird. Why am I not surprised?
Mm-hmm.
Yogurt?
Yogurt.
Our foul creature.
Oh. Let the race begin! A contest of heroes worthy of this celestial union.
It just looks cool. I don't really have any particular commentary to give. It's just, it looks cool.
I mean, to be fair, this is like the whole premise or like setup of the show is it's an anthology series that is based about various different like animation studios doing their own thing, telling interesting stories with their own unique visual animation. And so the big selling point for this kind of show is the visuals. So you're not going to get a lot of story through these trailers, which...
Because they're referring to shorts, so obviously you can't really do much in the way of exposition.
Yeah. But, I mean, yeah, the visuals do sell it, and some of these do really, like, get you interested in, like, see what...
Yeah, the like, little bits and pieces of premise that we are getting do sound cool and stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, yogurt.
Yogurt.
For the revolution. For the revolution.
You know, when a robot says for the revolution, I am breaking that fucking thing in 1,000 pieces and putting a magnet over its CPU.
I, for one, will welcome a robot overlord.
Like, it's the American in me, man. I cannot ever bow and submit.
I'm just saying we'd probably be better off if we're nice to the robots instead of paranoid about the robots.
Okay, that's fair. I think it's just if it looks at me and basically gives what is its equivalent of a creepy fucking smile, then I will react the way I just said I would. Also, hello, Jonah, and you're kind of...
Yeah, you showed up at the literal last second, my dude.
Well,
Sorry.
actually, they were here at 10:39. So
in any case, that is this week done and dusted.
Yeah. I mean, there were some other things we could cover, but for the sake of time, we're gonna cover those next week. Yeah. So with that, folks, I want to say goodbye. Adios, aloha, avideze, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
Shalom and fuck off.